Hello, my name is Lieutenant Miguel Tittman. Excited to be here today with Jocelyn Black on behalf of the Health and Wellness Office. We're excited to bring you new and exciting ways to integrate comprehensive initiatives into your firefighter wellness. Today, we're going to be talking about financial health and financial literacy. So once again, thank you for being with us. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Thanks, Miguel. It's wonderful to be here. And my name is Jocelyn. As you mentioned, I am the owner of Claire Financial, which is a New Mexico-based financial wellness and consulting firm. And before I get into the presentation today, I do have to mention a quick disclosure about my firm because I am technically a registered investment advisor, which means that the information that we discussed today and that I present is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make a specific recommendation about any particular investment or investment strategy or financial planning strategy. So investments, of course, involve risk, and unless I state otherwise, they are never guaranteed. Also, past performance with investments is never a guarantee of future performance. And I encourage you and everyone else watching to consult their own advisor or advisors for the most personalized and suitable recommendations based on your and their particular variables. So with that, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself.
All right.
I am a Philly native and tortured Philly sports fan. I am the working mom of 2 young children and fur babies, as you can see there on the screen, my puppies. And my kids, they're okay too. And that's us hiking in the Jemez last summer. I formerly served the state of New Mexico's 529 college savings and para 457 deferred compensation plan. And I worked very closely with public safety, so it's near and dear in my heart to be here with you today to do this presentation. I was program director for the City of Phoenix deferred compensation plan. I worked closely with fire and police there. As I mentioned, I own Claire Financial, a financial wellness and coaching business in New Mexico. I'm also a financial advisor with Strategy Financial Group, which is an independent fiduciary financial planning firm based in Phoenix, Arizona, but with offices here. I hold investment advisor and insurance licenses. I am a certified retirement counselor with only over 17 years of experience in financial services, and I am passionate about financial education, which is why I am here today. So again, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for being with us, and we're glad that you're passionate about financial planning and health, because a lot of us as firefighters aren't necessarily that, especially because we come in at such a young age sometimes. Right now, the hiring age is 18. I got it when I was 26, and I'm not claiming to be any more versed in financial wellness now than I was then, probably a little bit, but it's not always our priority. No. And sometimes it's even neglected to the point where it can be unhealthy. And, that's kind of why we want our entire membership to get a baseline education on wellness and literacy starting as soon as they get in, start as soon as they're able to get paychecks.
Yeah. And what a fantastic opportunity for those who are that young, starting their career and starting to earn income, to do financial planning that early in their career, so that ideally they don't have to be worrying and stressing about catching up later in life, as most of us do.
Yeah, it's really something that's kind of not normal in terms of a normal line of retirement, because we can retire so young. Sometimes, a friend of mine just retired yesterday, and he's 41 years old. So that being said, I'd love to get into some kind of conversation about what post-retirement might look like at the end, of course, but because that's coming up on a lot of our memberships as well. But I'd like to start at the beginning if we could.
Well, yeah, and I want to just take a step back and highlight how financial wellness fits into overall employee and just human wellness in general. And so technically, according to the wellness wheel, there are these various components of wellness: spiritual, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, and environmental. And financial is what we're focusing on today. And it is a key piece of overall wellness and health and well-being, and more so because it tends to be one of the leading, if not the leading, cause of stress in our lives. Yep. So ideally, we have all of these areas of wellness addressed and nurtured and well-balanced, but financial wellness and financial planning, even though it's typically the biggest stressor, tends to be the most neglected.
Yeah.
And dealt with only during times of crisis.
Yeah, and I would say even more so into the firefighter community. We don't necessarily get into this job to make money, and it's not always our. In terms of that wheel, we focus on a lot of other things before we focus on the financial wellness.
Yeah, what you do and the service that you provide day in, day out covers all of the other areas. Financial, maybe not so much, but certainly, as I mentioned, there's a tremendous opportunity for you to take care of that sooner rather than later, so that you can have more security and freedom and choice later. So I mentioned that financial stress is one of the leading stressors in our daily lives, and it is certainly a major distraction at work. And a recent survey from last year found that the majority of us admit that we're stressed about our finances, 58%. And 50% of the stressed of those of us, the employees, say that finances have been a distraction at work. So certainly that stress, worrying about how we're going to pay our bills, living paycheck to paycheck, not having enough during times of crisis and emergency, that affects all other areas of our lives. And since we spend most of our time at work, of course it's going to affect work.
Absolutely.
And it leads into this vicious cycle of financial stress affecting our mental health, affecting our emotional health, affecting our relationships, both at work and at home. And so we want to nip financial stress in the bud so that it can not have a domino effect on all the other areas.
Yeah, and the concept that I like to make sure that our membership understands, including myself, is balance. And we got to balance the financial aspect of wellness into all the other equations that, coupled by the traumatic stress that we see as first responders, coupled with the sleep deprivation that we experience, working the schedules that we have, which is 48 hours on, 96 hours off. We just have a very large ways of getting stressed.
Yes.
We got a lot of stress in our lives.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. And this is just one more that, balance.
Congratulations,
right.
You chose one of those lines of work that is under the most stress.
Yeah. Along the lines of us having a whole bunch of stress, we are a pretty resilient population to begin with. We go through a very strenuous academy. We're taught how to deal with stress, but we're not necessarily taught how to deal with the financial stresses.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of the leading causes of financial stress is not having cash reserves to lean on when financial emergencies come up and stuff breaks and the air conditioner goes out or the car breaks down or there's some sort of medical event and we need to come up with a deductible or the windshield cracks. And so unfortunately, the statistics and the studies show that most of us are unprepared even for just $1,000 emergency expense. And the younger we are, the less prepared we are, which is not a surprise, because the younger that we are, the more we tend to not think about this stuff until later. But most of us have less than $1,000 saved to deal with emergency expenses, and that's a problem. 38% of all employees across the age spectrum don't have that put away in a bank, checking, or savings account to cover emergencies. And I mentioned younger employees are feeling the brunt of financial stress. And that's because they're not, in most cases, thinking about having to plan and be proactive with this planning. So hopefully our conversation today and this training that you're offering inspires and motivates and maybe nudges more of your colleagues to just put some simple steps, action steps into place to get a little bit better prepared and alleviate a lot of stress.
Yeah, we're pretty good at spending every single penny that we make, and me included. And I'm Gen X, so that number looked pretty good for me. But when I came in at 26, all I could think about was what I was going to buy with my first big check once I got off probation. And that's kind of how we think, the majority of us.
Yeah, I remember when I had my first job out of school, I couldn't wait to spend all the more money I was making, and I wasn't making that much money. I think I made $31,000 with my first job, but I got into debt so fast, and it took me a decade to dig out from that foolishness of being young and dumb and not recognizing smart financial considerations, at least if not decisions. And so, man, if I could tell my 21-year-old self, what I know now, it'd be a very different situation.
Don't get into debt.
I probably wouldn't be here because I'd be retired.
Well, let's dive into that debt a little bit, because that's one of the the common themes of our members is immediately once they start getting their big check, they start spending more, and then they get into debt. So what's debt is one of those things that I don't really understand, because you need to borrow money to increase your buying power or borrowing power, if you will. So what's that balance? Yeah.
Well, first I'll take a step back before I get into debt to just kind of tee up the rest of our conversation. So when we're talking about financial wellness, right, we looked at where financial wellness fits in overall health and wellness, but financial well-being, there are lots of definitions out there. This was one that I liked because it's essentially talking about having a balance between your wants and your needs now, and thinking about and planning for a balance of covering your wants and your needs later. And so this definition says that financial well-being is a state of being reflecting a person's ability to meet current and ongoing financial obligations, feel secure in their financial future. So there's a big emotional component to this, and make choices that allow enjoyment of life. So not necessarily sacrificing everything now to have all of it later, but finding that balance. And not getting into too much debt early is a big part of that. Here's a illustration to help us think about the financial wellness roadmap and how to navigate getting to a stronger, more financially free position. And it really starts with financial literacy and what we're talking about today. Just building a baseline awareness and familiarity with basic financial concepts across the financial planning spectrum. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. And then from there, we can take additional steps to make smarter financial decisions, to start putting key planning actions into place that ultimately allow us to have confidence, peace of mind, financial security, and ideally financial freedom.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah. And if you want a definition for financial literacy, I found this one: the ability to use knowledge and skills, and hopefully we're working on that today, to manage financial resources effectively for a lifetime of financial well-being. And so here are the components of financial wellness. And they're color-coded, but I don't necessarily think these are in the perfect order. I think these can be ordered interchangeably. But essentially, we're talking about building up if sufficient emergency reserves, right, to cover those unexpected but expected expenses when they come up, because they will. Managing debt, not necessarily getting out of debt completely, because as you'll see in a couple of slides, there's what I consider good debt and then not so good debt. But not all debt is bad. It's a necessity of life. But how to manage and get out of bad debt, being content with your level of income because you can live within or ideally below your means, so that you can save for longer term goals, you can have your material needs met, you can have a little fun at the same time. And doing that starts really with effectively budgeting and just having an awareness of your cash flow on a regular basis. Most of us love to stick our heads in the sand and we say ignorance is bliss, and that's true in a lot of ways, right? And probably because we don't want to face what we might be ashamed of or what we fear or what's intimidating to us, so we avoid it. But if we don't know how much is coming in and how much is going out and where it's going and where we can possibly tweak expenses to put more in more advantaged places, then we can't build from there. So step one, first, before we deal with debt, is to just take stock, pun intended, of where you stand, which is calculating your net worth. And worth is a term that means different things for different people. But technically, in this context, we're talking about a simple equation. How much you have of value minus what you owe equals your net worth. So your assets may be a home if you own a home, a car, current market value, any savings or investment accounts that you have something accumulated in. Maybe you have other collectibles, coins, or a collectible car outside of that, and you can throw that in the asset column, maybe.
So basically what you're telling me is when I came in 2004, my net was a Jeep Cherokee 1992 because I didn't have any other bills. So that's what I was worth, was my Jeep Cherokee.
Yeah, and actually, if you had that and you didn't have any debt, you were in good shape because you had positive net worth. Most students who graduate from school or just starting their first job have negative net worth.
Right.
Because you typically have student debt, and the more advanced degrees or further schooling you've pursued, the more in debt you may be in terms of student loans. And so you can have negative net worth for a long time into a career as you're paying down those loans in particular. So I wouldn't worry about having negative net worth, especially if you're younger and new in your career. But what's key about net worth is you use it, or you should, as a tangible measuring stick for where you stand now, and you use it as a guideline to build wealth and know where you're going and how you're progressing moving forward. So you got to know where you stand. Step 2, where do you want to go? What do you want to accomplish? Most of us don't take the time to really think about this, and certainly not document it.
Right.
Whether we're writing it down or typing it up on the computer. But ideally, you're categorizing what you want to accomplish in terms of timeframes. In the short term, 0 to 2 years, medium term, 2 to 10 years, and then long term, 10 plus years. So long term, we're typically talking about retirement or our next phase, our next career phase, or next life stage, maybe saving for a child or a loved one's higher education. But if we're young and we're just starting out in career, we're definitely not worried about that. We're worried about how we're going to cover the expense when the car breaks down, or how we're going to make that down payment on the new truck that we think we need ASAP. Ideally, we're thinking at least also about how to put $1,000 in an emergency fund and just have some little cushion built up, or paying off high interest debt if we're saddled with that already. But also, we're heading into the holiday season. How are we going to budget? I know it's a dirty word, but
not on Christmas. You can't budget for Christmas.
Right? Trying to save a little bit leading up to Christmas as much as possible so that we're not putting that on credit cards and then paying it off for 6 months to years after that. And also maybe paying for a vacation that we're planning to take around Christmas time. The kids are off from school. Maybe we're planning to go somewhere a little bit warmer or go skiing or whatever. We're typically paying for those vacations with credit cards. So if we can at least start thinking about these things, then we are in a more informed and stronger position to try to budget for them.
Yeah, so step 1, guys, start thinking about these things.
That's right. Yeah. Just think about it. What do you want to accomplish and when? Okay. Now, speaking of that new truck and getting into debt too soon, I wanted to highlight this comparison of what a 7-year used car loan on an F-150, the most popular truck on the road, right, today, is most likely going to run you. So that average used F-150 retail price is close to $38,000. And we're probably going to want to stretch those payments out as long as possible because that's going to lower our monthly payment. And so doing that over 84 payments, which is what,
Standard.
7 years?
Yep.
We're still looking at over $625 as a monthly payment. And now on the right-hand side, I showed an example of taking $300. So if you were able to basically cut your car payment in half and take that extra and invest it, you could potentially have hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So what you're saying
to buy
is,
lots of trucks.
So what you're saying
in
is
cash.
the 2008 GMC Sierra that I bought brand new when I got off probation, or I guess it was a little further after, that was not a good investment.
Probably not, because in most cases, cars, trucks are depreciating assets. They lose value, right? The biggest appreciation happens when you drive it off the lot, but in most cases, it's not going to ever improve. It's only going to escalate downwards.
Okay.
And so car loans are an example of bad debt, which I'll get to in a couple of slides.
All right.
But step 3, budgeting. But here's an easy way to think about budgeting in a not too terribly extensive, invasive way. So not worrying about templates and spreadsheets and thinking too much about it. If you just follow this simple method, which is 50, 30, 20, 50% of your income goes towards your needs, your basic expenses, housing, transportation. Now, that's arguably the payment on the new truck.
Okay.
I'm saying it's probably half of what that payment is looking like. For transportation, insurance, there are certain things that you just have to insure and protect. Obviously, our home and our automobile, but also ourselves, right? Our life, especially if we have those depending on us and young ones, our ability to work and earn income, right? So making sure we have enough coverage in the event that we aren't able to work and earn at least the same level of income for an extended period of time, which is actually much more likely to happen to us than dying early. So groceries, healthcare, utilities. 30% of your income you can spend on whatever you want. Eating out, doing fun stuff, craft brews. I don't know about neck throw pillows for you guys, but maybe massages.
Yeah.
Certainly fun tech gadgets or more stuff for the truck.
Okay.
But commit to at least 20% of your income going towards savings, paying down the bad debt, and maybe even investing for longer term goals.
So in simplistic terms, if someone were to make $50,000 a year, which is common amongst our ranks, 20% of that you would want to go towards your paying down debt and building up savings. Okay.
And if you're fortunate enough to not have bad debt to pay down, then that's more that you can put towards your longer term goals. More you can be contributing to an account to put a down payment on a new home, or saving to invest for a child's higher education and or your retirement. So, but that's a simple method to stick to just to keep it easy.
Fairly simple.
Fairly simple. And, there are going to be some months where you can't exactly follow it, but if you can stick to that most of the time, you'll probably be in good shape.
You have a balanced kind of financial health,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
So step 4,
All right.
now that you know where you stand, where you want to go, what your cash flow looks like, and what your plan is going to be for your income, now let's address credit.
Okay.
Because credit is critically important to saving more, because you're not then overspending on higher interest on bad debt.
Okay.
Or even good debt. If you're looking to apply for a mortgage, you're going to be better rated and qualify for lower interest rates if you have a higher credit score.
Okay.
But when we're young and dumb, we're not thinking about credit scores.
Or have any idea what interest rates are.
That's right. So we just want to, we get those offers to open a new credit account, and we sign up, and we don't care what the interest rate is, and we just want that extra credit so we can spend it immediately,
The first time I was able to get a credit card, I didn't even look at it. I get a credit card.
Right. You're like, how much is on it?
I'm going to build my credit.
Yeah. I mean, it's a necessary evil again.
Right.
Like, we have to build credit and use credit cards, but we have to understand how to use them smartly so that we're not being tricked by the credit card companies to get in our own way and dig ourselves into a ever deepening hole of
So you're
debt.
going to tell me those tricks?
I'm telling you these tricks.
Because I need them.
So if you are suffering from a not so hot credit score, here are the key ways to get boosts to your credit score. Paying more frequently. So most of us are paying the minimums on our credit, especially if we have credit cards with a revolving balance. But if you can pay at least the minimum and then $10 extra.
That little, just $10 extra.
$10 extra.
As long as it's an extra payment.
As long as it's an extra payment. As long as you're meeting the minimum. Anything extra is going to be an advantage and help boost your credit score.
That's good to know.
Paying bills on time is probably the best thing you can do. So setting up those automatic payments is really important.
Okay.
Don't wait for the bills to come in the mail, because you're going to stick them somewhere and you're going to forget about them. Most of us are probably doing our banking and
Online.
most things online.
Yeah.
So make sure if you open a new credit account or you have one and you haven't done this yet, get online and set up automatic payments, at least the minimums, if you're not sure if you can afford more. And then as your income comes in and you start getting used to making a little bit more, you can set up one-time extra payments on top of your automatic monthly. Yeah, you want to pay back all your debts, but I'm not going to worry about that so much. And I'll talk about how to prioritize paying down your debt in a couple of slides. You want to lower your utilization. So the credit agencies and lenders look at what your credit limit is and how much of that credit limit you're using up. So the lower your balance is, the more credit limit you're going to have, and that lowers your utilization. And that is positive for your credit score. Increasing your credit limit. So every now and then, your creditor will automatically offer you an increased credit line. And in some cases, that's good if you're not going to be too tempted to spend up to that new credit limit.
We're tempted.
Yeah, I know. So you have to be disciplined. But if they increase your credit limit, that's probably more on top of that utilization that you currently have that they're now giving you. So you have more breathing room, and that's going to lower your utilization, potentially increasing your score. You definitely need to check in on your credit report every now and then. Most of you probably have never checked your credit report.
I have. I bought a house. So
yes. Okay. So if you bought a house or applied for some kind of loan of significance, you've probably had to.
But you're telling me I should check it regularly.
Yes,
how do I do
because there are incorrect things that get on all of our credit reports all the time. It is way more common than we would like to believe. And so no one else is going to be monitoring it unless you utilize one of these like automatic credit monitoring services, which I would recommend. You can download an app and have it done for you. Mint is a great one, which offers budgeting and credit monitoring for free. So check that out.
What kind of incorrect information are you referring to that could be on our credit report?
New accounts that have been opened. If you have new accounts being opened on a frequent or regular basis, that's a negative factor that can negatively affect your credit score. And with identity theft running rampant and only getting worse, it's more common than you'd think for people opening accounts under your name. That shouldn't be on there. Sometimes we'll open an account and then we'll be really good about paying off the balance, and then we don't want to use that credit account anymore, and the lender will close the account, or the creditor will close the account without us realizing it, which might not be a bad thing, but actually closing accounts, especially ones that you've had open a long time, hurts your credit score.
Really?
Yes, because it lowers your utilization and your limit, right? Because you have less of a credit limit because that account's been closed. And if it's been an account open for a long time, that removal of the length of credit history can negatively affect your score. So you might need to get into the habit of spending a little bit on those accounts once every 6 months just to keep them open. This is particularly important with store cards, retail cards. If you have
like a Target card?
Yeah, Target card, Best Buy card, something like that.
Keep it open.
You should keep it open and use it. You just have to get into the good habit of paying off your balance as soon as you spend the money and swipe the credit card. And unfortunately, too many of us overuse it and stretch our credit, and then we can't pay it back, and we end up with these revolving balances. And because of the super high interest rates that are associated with credit cards, we get into these deeper holes of debt.
So it's funny you mentioned the Best Buy, because I recently opened up a Best Buy credit card because I'm going to buy some appliances for a new house that I'm building. I purchased something small and I'm paying the minimum, thinking that that's going to help build my credit. But you're telling me I should pay off all of it if I'm able to immediately?
Well, question is, did it come with a promotional period where you didn't have any interest charged? For sometimes they offer 6 months no interest, 12 months no interest.
It was 6 months.
6 months. So ideally you want to have the balance paid off by 6 months. Because if you don't, and this is a really good question because this is so common. If you don't have the whole balance paid off by the end of the promotional period, they're going to charge you all the interest that accrued during that 6 month period and tack it onto whatever your balance is that you'll now have to pay following 6 months.
Wow.
And then that interest continues to accrue. It's compounding interest, which works for you for long-term investing goals, but not with revolving debt. So definitely try and get it paid off.
Gotcha. I want to pay it off.